Hello, this is the Sports Betting Whale. As you all know, the typical sports bettor loses money when they bet on sports. But not me. I don't just break the mold, I've shattered it. I've handcrafted my sports betting journey from scratch into a history that reads like a dynasty out of an epic novel. Since the 1990s, I have wagered hundreds of millions to billions of dollars on sports and walked away with over $30 million in winning profits. My legendary winning streaks cement my status among the pantheon of superstars as one of the biggest and most profitable sports bettors ever. The theme of today's video is to continue the story from my previous video. In my last video, I gave you the full story of how I successfully destroyed Bally's sportsbooks profits for the season and then for the year from a weekend of betting on sports. Today's video will continue that story and reveal to you what happened next. This is when I started to make my wagers in the Mirage sportsbook and ended up banking tens of millions of dollars in profits in the following years, all while their directors watched as the millions evaporated into At the end of this video, I'll also share with you my free picks for today, so make sure you stay tuned to the end. I got used to winning 10, 20, 30, 50, $100,000 on a ticket. I guess that's just not that common for people to take small amounts of money and run it up as fast as I was doing. My first real experience was at the Bally's Casino, where I came in and beat them, and the sportsbook director told me that they were going to change the name of the casino to my name because I'm basically going to own it if I kept betting like that. And I said, well, that's no big, I think I beat him for $125,000 or something. And then I said, that's not that big a deal. I mean, you guys are Bally's. And they go, you don't realize what we make in the course of a season or a year. You're about to wipe us out for our entire profit for the entire year. You already wiped us out for a season in a weekend. And I'm like, oh, I'm serious. I didn't know. I didn't realize that was that big of a deal. I went to a couple of the private, back then they had private sports books too. And I won 125, 150,000 on a couple round robins. And one of them closed. They closed the next week. At least I got paid. Broken pieces of that winning run still are scattered all over the place like a wreckage of a plane crash. So to me, I didn't think it was a big deal, but it certainly became a big deal to others. My fame spread throughout Las Vegas like a virus pretty quick, and pushing a lot of the sports books to the point where they certainly did not want any of my action. One of the things I did is I bet these round robin combination parlays where the computer system didn't even realize how much exposure they had on them if all the games hit. And I get on a hot run, it's like taking candy from a baby. But one of the things I remember was after going on a big run at some other places, I went over to Caesars. And Caesars Palace was still is, it's one of the biggest casinos around. And I went up to bet one of my combination tickets, and they broke the news to me that my limits were going to be $100. And like $100 a parlay, and they no, $100 total. And that I said, well, why? And they said, we already heard of what you've done around town, and we don't want the same thing to happen to us. And so that's what led to one of their sportsbook writers telling me about Steve Wynn's Mirage, which was recently opened, and that they have a take it all policy. They'll take any amount of action that I would want to put up. So Binion's was doing a lot back then too, but I wasn't as fond of going downtown and dealing with Binion's crowd downtown. The Mirage was a beautiful place and definitely more my style. What a place for action back in the 90s. Steve Wynn wanted to attract the big gamblers to his new casino. The casino, just as a side note, cost over $1 billion. Casinos didn't cost $1 billion to build back then. And if anyone knows the history of it, the money was funded through Michael Milken and his junk bonds. So they had a higher than normal interest rate that they had to cover. And they had quite a big daily overhead and nut, and then they had to cover all of the interest as well. So Steve Wynn was never shy on taking big bets. He was at the Golden Nugget before, and they were known for taking some big action down there. But he was under the gun at the Mirage, and for him to be able to afford to cover those notes, he decided to go after the whales. A lot of them were coming from Asia at the time, and Australia and Mexico. With that strategy, some of these whales like to bet big in the sports book too. So Steve Wynn wanted to accommodate the biggest bettors in the world at the Mirage at that time, and he told the sportsbook director to take almost any bet from anybody that was a casino player. So that's the background of the Mirage. Let me cut back to what happened when I went over there. So when I arrived at the window at the Mirage Sportsbook, I asked them what their betting limits were, and their response was minimum $5. And I said, okay. I said, no, I'm more interested in what are your upper limits. To my surprise, the response was, I've never seen him refuse a bet. Wow, I stood there staring at the sportsbook like Copernicus finally discovering the true place of Earth in the cosmos. In one swift moment, my mind lit up like a pinball machine. My face suddenly took on the expression of a teenage boy handed the keys to a brand new Mercedes on his 16th birthday. I instantly realized this was my chance. This was my opening. Like a quarterback finally seeing the hole of an opponent's defense. Here was my chance to jump shift and movement towards huge winning success. My blood was so thrilled with hope and possibility that I couldn't hold back a grin. After placing my round robin bet at the Mirage, I smiled like a vulture with the first option to a fresh kill. Hours later, I had turned a small amount of money into over 90,000. I think it was 92,000, like $310 or something. Normally, that's going to send up sirens in 15, 20 minutes, waiting for approvals and then waiting for the money to show up from the cage or whatever they're going to do. And I went up to this one lady and gave her the ticket, and she says, are you going to be betting against it? And I said, no, not right now, because it was at nighttime. She said, okay, you want chips or cash? And I said, it pays over $90,000. She says, chips or cash? And I said, okay, cash. And thinking, all right, might as well go pull up a lazy boy and relax for a while, because it's gonna be at least 20 minutes before they get me the money. And she started pulling out the $10,000 straps of $100 bills. And I said, you have that much money right here in your drawer? She said, yeah. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I mean, you can't even imagine what you have to go through back then at a normal sports book, if they would ever let you bet enough to win 90,000 on the ticket. You'd have supervisors, the casino manager, I mean, everybody looking at you like you just robbed the place. And here is this little old lady, she's like, here you go. I'm like, oh my goodness. So I was looking at the winnings, not that $90,000 was that exciting. It was exciting to me that they would take one ticket that paid 90, and I didn't have to go and get supervisor approval and wait and everything else. It was like routine for them. And I felt like, my goodness. So right in front of me was an opportunity. I knew with my systems I was going to make a life-changing amount of money betting on sports at the Mirage. This was the moment that I realized that I could consistently win in the millions. Later, I found out what it required for me to be able to continue to bet at that level, and I complied. There's a lot of playing craps, a lot of playing blackjack, and at the time my wife was betting the high limit slots. They loved that. Of course, that was just money right down the drain, but that was just cost of doing business to be able to bet in the sports book the way I wanted. And also, too, I think one point I was getting like $50,000 to $100,000 a month in comps. So anybody that knew me at that time, you could have a 2-bedroom suite comped and anything you wanted, shows, food, etc. at the Mirage. So I had a lot of friends, you can imagine. So the rest was history. In an instant, I had really springboarded into the big leagues of sports betting and was able to bet and win millions of dollars routinely. So I went on to drain the sports book out of tens of millions of dollars from my wagers over the next years before that all came to an end. So you can see how this was just a kind of a standard bet for me, but this was a preseason bet where I won 150, got paid back 154,000. So when I was betting, Little did I know that the Mirage properties were turning around and creating ad campaigns promoting the fact that I'd won all that money off these tickets. Here's another wager where I won over $500,000 in one ticket, which you're going to see on the screen here. It paid $560,000. That's quite a bit of money for one ticket, and no sports book around is going to take this kind of action unless you're a huge whale in the casinos, which again, I'm not willing to do that anymore. My next big opportunity to wager at maximum limits came in the early 2000s with Pinnacle. I deposited $50,000, started placing my wagers. Amazing how high of the limits that they would take and let you keep betting and back and back and back, and sometimes without even moving the line. So 4 days later, after a series of round robin, straight, and halftime bets, I ended up winning over $4 million. The minimum I won per day in 4 days, each day, was $1 million. Over my lifetime, I won tens of millions of dollars betting on sports. I've continued to win year after year with my whiz-bang system, zigging when the rest of the average bettors were zagging. And also, too, you'll see a lot of my picks go against what the touts are promoting out there. So now, let me teach you these methods. Let me teach you the exact methods and techniques I've used from being a small jester in the king's court to building an estate of everyone's envy. So you see, I didn't just stare at success with the eye of an eagle. I took it into my own hands to create it. I've spent the last 40 years of my life piecing together the winning formulas to bet on sports, scratching my way up from the bottom rung of the ladder to become one of the biggest and winningest sports bettors in history. So hopefully you've enjoyed that whole story. Today's free picks are round robin in the NBA. We're going to go with the Philadelphia 76ers. They're laying around 7. The Miami Heat money line, if you can get a money line, otherwise do the spread. And the Boston Celtics minus 8.5. Please join me at thewhalepicks.com today, because you will be able to have access to all of my VIP picks today. In addition, there's a special pick of the week. Really solid lock today. You don't want to miss it. So go to the whalepicks.com and sign up. Make a lot of money today. Thank you very much.
Yeah.